We're going to be talking about Zen and death. For various reasons, one, I had a dream about my grandfather who passed away, and I was mentioning to Miyoda. Two, I think it's been on my mind since the coronavirus started. Um, what does Buddhism have to say with impermanence and about impermanence and death, and how to cope with it as human beings, and how do we approach it? And also, we've been chanting every week, so that also kind of everything kind of melded together for me to wanting to do this talk. So what are the Buddhist views on impermanence and death? And there are many, but one main one is that there is no permanent self. If you guys want to take out your notebooks and take out some notes, that'd be just kidding. So when we go to the cafeteria, all the monks go to the non-self service, as you guys can see. So in Zen, we aim to resolve the fear of death in the here and now. Let me put you guys down here. So there we go. But how do we do that? How do we resolve this fear in this moment, right? Because we're not trying to do it in the past or in the future. And I'm not sure, even though Obi-Wan is confused. So let's go back to the beginning. Awareness of death is what prompted the Buddha to perceive reality as it is. So if you remember, Siddhartha was in this castle, hidden away by his dad. And then fate had it, he got out and he saw 4 things. Does anyone know what the 4 things he saw? You can unmute yourself.
He saw an elderly person.
Yep, that's one of them. What other 3 things did he see?
He saw someone that was sick.
Yes. More? Yodo can participate if she'd like.
Well, of course, we want to save death for last, but there's one other. There's one other that's escaping mine.
So you know that. All right. Let's check it out. Sick person, old person, a corpse, and a world renouncer.
Oh, that was the other thing.
Yeah. You guys did really good. I even was forgetting about it right now. So, long is the cycle of birth and death to the fool who does not know the true path. So this is in the Dhammapada. I thought it was timely, and I put that on here. So the whole thing about Buddhism is getting out of this cycle of birth and death, right? And it goes back to that's what the Buddha realized, and he started this path on this awareness of death. So impermanence and death have been the core practices of Buddhists. And so that kind of begs the question of what is it that we fear then? And it's not so much that we are afraid of death in and of itself. It's what we fear is the extinction of ourself. But we're going to be exploring this farther because there is no self, right? So what's the Zen solution? I found this quote and I thought it was really cool. So die before you die, and then when you die, you don't really die. And I thought that sounded really Zen. And actually, it's not. It's written. I mean, I saw 2 sources. One is that it was a Zen quote, and another one was written in a Christian church, actually. And I found that interesting. So what if I told you that? Oh man, let me put you guys up here. What if I told you that if you die before you die, then you don't really die? And I found that too, and I thought it was very timely. So zazen is preparation for death. Zazen is sitting down, right? Sitting down in meditation, meeting it head on and walking through it. But when we read that at first, it's like, how do we meet death head on? How do we walk through death? That doesn't make any sense. So what does this mean? So part of this meeting it head on, what it means to me is letting go of these things, likes and dislikes. What Song has taught us too, and Venerable Myoto. So no judgment of the mind. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't want to die. Or is there life after death? And all these questions. That doesn't mean that we don't question things and we don't have a healthy skepticism about things, but we don't get hung up on likes and dislikes a lot. Expectations of ourselves and others, we let go of these things too. We let go of attachments, all kinds of attachments. It could be relationships with loved ones. That doesn't mean that we don't love them, but attachments in a Buddhist sort of way, in where we cling to, and that clinging creates suffering for us. That kind of attachment. But most importantly, you let go of yourself. So, what is one thing that Sun Song always said that would go with letting go? Anyone? Care to guess? Okay, I'll show you guys. We put it all down. Sun Song used to say. So, I'm going to tell you guys a story. The death of cats. Sun Song had a student who had a cat. So, Sun Song didn't have a cat. The student had a cat. The daughter of Sun Song's student, her name was Gita, and she was still troubled after the burial and had a question for Sun Song. So I'm going to read you guys the story, and I'm going to share with you guys the story that I found. I really liked it. So it starts right here. The Gita asked Sun Song, "What happened to Katsi? Where did he go?" Sun Song said, "Where do you come from?" And she said, "From my mother's belly." "Where does your mother come from?" And Gita was silent. Then Sun Song went on to explain, everything in the world comes from the same thing. It is like in a cookie factory. Many different kinds of cookies are made. Lions, tigers, elephants, houses, people, they all have different shapes and different names. But they are all made from the same dough, and they all taste the same. So all the different things that you see, a cat, a person, a tree, Venerable Myoto, Oscar, Alfonso, they're all really the same. So we see this picture illustrating that. And then we give them different names, but in themselves they have no names. When you are thinking, all things have different names and different shapes. Going back to what we were talking about, likes and dislikes. But when you are not thinking, all things are the same. So when we put it all down, there are no words for them. People make words. A cat doesn't say, "I'm a cat." People say, "This is a cat." The sun doesn't say, "My name is the sun." People say, "This is the sun." So he's talking about the conceptualization of things, conceptualizing things. So when someone asks you, "What is this?" how should you answer? And then Gita says, "I shouldn't use words then." And then he said, "Very good. You shouldn't use words." So if someone asks you, "What is Buddha?" what should you answer? And Gita was silent. She didn't know what to say. Susan said, "Now you ask me." I'm trying to teach her, how to do it. She asked him, "What is Buddha?" Susan hits the floor. Gita laughs because she's, little girl or little boy, little girl. Susa said, "Now I ask you, what is Buddha?" Gita hits the floor. "What is God?" Gita hits the floor again. "What is your mother?" Gita hits the floor. "What are you?" Gita hits the floor one last time. Very good. This is what all things in the world are made of. You and Buddha and God and your mother and the whole world are the same dough. So Gita smiled. Do you have any more questions? And then Gita said, you still haven't told me where Katz went, the little kitty. Susan leaned over, looked into her eyes, and said, you already understand where he went. Then Gita said, oh, and she hit the floor very hard, and then she left. One last thing, she did say that she's not going to answer that way when she tells people in school, and I thought that was funny. So let me go back to the presentation. Oh, that is right here.
That's one of my favorite Sun stories, Oscar. I love that one.
I'm glad you like. I liked it too.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it right now. So the question is not how to think or how to approach death differently, but why are we not doing it? Why don't we incorporate it? So it's an invitation to incorporate impermanence, if that sounds too intense, impermanence into our daily lives. And we see it all the time. I mean, it's happening right now. Throughout history, they have incorporated these things. And in a lot of places in Thailand, they still do. I mean, Venerable Myodo often talks about monks and meditating, in the mountains. And I'm going to show you a couple of pictures that where they depict throughout history monks doing this. Right. So we have the monk, and then down here are the corpses. And again, here's the monk imagining corpses. And if you're squeamish, I'm going to show you real life things. So please look away if you don't want to look at this. I will only show it for a couple of seconds. But these are real monks in Thailand meditating in front of corpses. And one of the monks was asked, I think it was in the New York Times. And by the way, I have all the sources for all the information because I just like to do that, so I can share it with all of you. And in the article in the New York Times, the monk said, we just sort of live in denial of the fact that we have all these organs and bones and liquids and fluids. We're obsessed with the externals, like money, cars, fancy things. No one wants to see the internals. But we try to see them in an equal light as the external. Neither delighting nor being repelled, so likes and dislikes again, by the attractive or the unattractive signs of the external or the internal. I thought that quote was good. So he's a good teacher, and I bow to him. Impermanence all around us. So impermanence is all around us all the time, as well as life. So I don't want this talk to be bleak. I don't want this talk to be sad or depressed. I'm just saying that we need to acknowledge both parts, and because both parts are one, right? So what can we do as Zen students or on this spiritual path? First, just sit down. That's the first thing. And if nothing else, you can cover the rest of the screen and just sit. Only don't know, right? Number two is you can practice gratitude. Venerable Myodo has told us before that she keeps a gratitude journal. I try to keep a gratitude practice. I don't do it as often, but at least once a week when I wake up and when I meditate, I try to be grateful and think the things that I have in the relationships I maintain, and I'm grateful for that. Three, we can practice, like the great Larry said, acceptance and not resignation, which are two different things, right? So I don't want to make this talk bleak. So they are different things, and acceptance is just the acknowledgement that we are all going to die, and that it's okay, and that sometimes we don't have to know everything in the mystery that is life. So number four is express and be present with fears and emotions. We also don't want to neglect our fears. So sitting down in practice is not neglecting our emotions and putting aside our fears of dying, or of people that we love that are dying, or of not mourning. It's really just expressing those emotions to people we care about, or to ourselves, or writing them down, or expressing them in music or art. However we express ourselves, and being present with these emotions. And then last but not least, I think having a support system like we do in this Sangha, family and friends, is really important to being able to cope with death and dying and the impermanence of life. So So no need to fear because we believe in this. We'll be back then, as Buddhists, you know. And these are all the sources that I got some, and so yeah, I can share those with you if you'd like, or email this whole presentation to you. Does anyone have any questions, comments, feelings, or thoughts about this whole death business?
I've heard, people say that we are all living and dying kind of at the same time, even right now in the present, it's like Marion of 2 years ago, who is she? She's gone. She's, that person is no longer with us. So, and we're all, being born into this present moment and the next moment, and who we're becoming. So, living and dying at the same time. What is that thing they say about every so many years, every cell in your body has died and been replaced. So we're kind of in this constant flux. That on a smaller scale,
That's true. Yeah. Anybody else have any? Oh, Larry.
This is something that I think about a great deal, for whether it's good or bad. It's probably both and neither. From the Vedanta perspective, there is a self. It's got absolutely nothing to do with our body or our mind. There's essentially one health, one self, which is the self everywhere. In the Buddhist perspective, there's no inherent self. There isn't an inherent self. And what I kind of thought of while you're going through your presentation, which I thought was very good, was that I think we all have a penchant to believe and think that we are a cartoon, like the old cartoon where they're drawing pictures like thousands of years ago. They used to draw thousands of pictures and they'd flip them, and there'd be an impression that somebody is doing something. And essentially, nobody is doing a damn thing. It's just like we're a sheet of paper. Another sheet of paper. There's nothing there. It's just a sheet of paper. Or cards you would put in the spokes of your bicycle so it'd sound like a motorcycle.
Thank you for adding that insight, Larry. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed what you said.
Thank you.
Good talk.
Does anyone have anything else to say about death and dying, insights, discussion questions, anything else you'd like to add?
I got one more thing. I know I'm being a pig. I've often tripped on the fact that how the heck can you die when you're never even really born?
It's a great question.
Yes, it is a good question. I wish I had the answer.
Me too. Maybe he has no answer.
Maybe it doesn't. Oscar, that was a wonderful, fabulous talk. I have one thought that I want to share. When you were talking about why not to fear death, and I love the cartoon with the back scene on the tombstone. That was hilarious. But not everybody in the West believes in rebirth, and that's fine because that's all it is a rebirth. We don't have any empirical evidence one way or the other. But I would still say have no fear, because fear doesn't do any good. It's like being afraid of paying your taxes. Well, you got to do it. being afraid of going to work, being afraid of falling asleep. These are things we have to do to function in our society and sometimes just to survive. We're going to die. So there's no point in being afraid of it. What we can do is just to prepare for it. Like Oscar was talking about, contemplating death and not being afraid. My mother-in-law, I was with her the night before she died, and a lot of time in the months leading up to her passing. And she was Catholic, and so her set of beliefs in the afterlife are completely different from mine. I don't know who's right, wrong, maybe the truth somewhere in the middle, but they brought her great comfort. And the point is that she was never afraid. She just had this calmness, this resignation that this is going to happen. I was sitting around the kitchen table with her and the kids, her grown kids, when she was making her funeral arrangements. And she said, I want this, and you better have some good music at my repast. And I want you to play When the Saints Go Marching In, because she was from New Orleans, and you better serve shrimp. And they're like, yes, Mom, we'll do that. She says, if you don't, I'm going to come back and haunt you. So she just had a beautiful, beautiful outlook, and I'm so happy that I was around her in those final days, because it's just a model to me of what it can be like. I won't say that she wasn't happy or excited about it, but she was okay with it. She believed she was going to go to a better place than this place. She believed she was going to see her family again, and she did all the things that she could do to make her passing easy on her husband and her children. She made sure all the financial things were straightened out. She made sure that her will was updated. She made sure she had a living will so that the medical people knew at what point to stop providing care. She took all the decision-making responsibility out of the hands of her family and set it all up ahead of time so that there were no arguments between family. Do we pull the plug? Do we not? No, it's right here in writing. This is what Mom wants. This is what we're going to do. Right? She gave an amazing gift in those final few weeks of her life. So I just felt like sharing that. That's something that I aspire to. I want to be like my late mother-in-law, Melba Gugis. I hope that I am able to have as much grace and dignity at the end of my life as she did.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And now we can sit with that if you guys would like. I only have a bell, but if you and Annabelle have the bell's okay. So I'll hit the bell 3 times.
Now, before you hit the bell, I will say that there are Korean temples that are very attached to the chukpi. We don't have a chukpi. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We're going to practice non-attachment tonight and use a bell.
There you go.
Right? Okay. If Marion hadn't found the striker for the moktak, I'd say go in the kitchen and get a spoon. Right? We're not attached. It's just stuff. Okay. Thanks, Oscar.
No problem.